Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Torin here with another Warhammer Total War Online commentary. In this particular ladder battle, I will be playing the Warriors of Chaos, and I'm facing off against an Empire opponent. So traditionally for me, this has actually been a pretty hard matchup. So any input you guys have about your Chaos games and ways you've been able to deal with the Empire or pretty much any other faction for that matter, I have had quite a bit of success with Chaos against Beastmen, but against other factions I tend to struggle a little bit. But regardless, we'll get in my army composition here. So I have a front line of Chaos Warriors who are shielded and armored, very high armor sitting at 100 with pretty decent leadership as well. So I feel like against Empire, this is a pretty good front line. They're capable of absorbing all kinds of missile fire and are just, an all-around decent unit for what you're getting. In the secondary line, I have Forsaken. So I actually have two groups of Forsaken. What I like to do with Chaos is I like to engage with my front line, who's just super tanky, and then use these Forsaken, who actually have 48 run speed. So that's definitely not a joke. That's very fast. So I like to use them to then circle around the flanks and pressure certain areas, and I feel like they're pretty good at that, especially considering they do quite a bit of damage and have a lot of shock value. Behind them, I brought one group of Chosen with Halberds. Again, these are anti-large, and I basically just bring these to deal with Demogryph Knights and other monstrous units like these flying beasts over here and all that kind of fun stuff. So I do like to bring Chosen with Halberds against Empire because, again, they do have some monstrous units, and they're very sturdy with 120 armor, pretty good weapon strength, and really high melee defense. So I also brought Archaon the NEVERCHOSEN. So I accidentally forgot to give him a mount. I spent all my money, and unfortunately he's going to have to hoof it this battle. So it ends up being a little tough for him. But regardless, he's a trooper and hopefully can hang. I also got two Exalted Heroes. My thinking there was that, the games I had played Chaos beforehand, they basically just use the Amber Wizard, General of the Empire, and Empire Captain to dive on your leader and kill him instantly. And I figured having two Exalted Heroes kind of nearby would be able to, put a little pressure on his heroes. Again, that was my thinking, but we will see how it works out. And then I have a group of Chaos Spawn. These guys are pretty sturdy, and they're really good at taking out greatswords and other units like that. So I usually will, try and find a point in his line, like back here, for example, to circle around and overwhelm, because those Chaos Spawn will generate huge value against these type of units. So again, you don't want them going into Spearmen or other anti-large type infantry. You want to try and get them into the opponent's greatswords. Then I also have a group of Chaos Hounds over here, and I have one over here. So again, those are just to run around and harass. In an ideal world, he'll use his cavalry to chase them away, and essentially the cavalry won't be messing with you. So as far as his army goes, he has a group of Outriders, two groups of Demogryph Knights, actually, one with Halberds and one without. So looks like he was planning, in case I brought some monstrous units, he could send those and then send the other ones after infantry. He has an Amber Wizard who will be summoning a Manticore, a General of the Empire, and I think that might be it for his leadership. I'm not sure if he has an Empire Captain, but no, there he is. He's got a Light Wizard, so actually two different Lords of Magic. In the front line, he has Spearmen, which will be pretty good fodder. Just standard Spearmen, very cheap. No need to get shields against Chaos. Then Greatswords here, Handgunners here, another group here, as well as a Great Cannon, which is actually doing pretty good damage. It's already done some work against my Chosen, and also I think it tagged some of my Chaos Warriors. So without further ado, let's get started. So again, as Chaos, you basically just have to rapidly approach your opponent, as unfortunately his cannon is targeting these Chosen, and that is a very, very high value target. These are a very expensive unit, sitting around 1,500 resources. So every one you lose is quite a bit of resources down the drain. So you want to close that distance as fast as you can to try and get rid of the losses you take from the cannon. Another thing also is these Chaos Warriors are going to be pretty decent at absorbing the handgunner fire. So you want to send them in first and leave these Forsaken in the back line, because these Forsaken, a lot of people think they're extremely squishy, but they actually do have 75 armor. So again, they're not like complete pushovers, but they will take substantial damage from missile fire, especially from handgunners. So you want to follow them up and keep them protected. So I am sending my Hounds. I was kind of started to go around here, but he adapted accordingly. So I decided to pressure these Outriders a little bit. I was hoping to bait his general down, but I pressure them just so they don't fire at me as I get close, and then I immediately run them off as soon as he reacts. So I was just trying to use these to kind of keep my opponent on his toes and keep him busy. So this other group of Chaos Warhounds is going to go all the way around the back. So he invested most of his cavalry and mobile units over here. So he had a pretty open flank over here. He does pull these Spearmen around, but regardless, once things get started, I'll be able to easily run around and then hopefully get on these cannons. So as you can see, the Handgunners are starting to tee off on my Chaos Warriors. They're doing a little bit of damage. So I was a little concerned about that and was really trying to pressure. So what I do now is, as I was telling you guys earlier, I pull the Forsaken around. I engage them here. So they're going to get pretty good shock value on these guys. And I also pull an Archaon, or that may be an Exalted Hero, actually, I think it is. And then I use the Cascading Cloak of Fire with Archaon, who does have access to Lure of Fire. And again, with Chaos, I really like to overload flanks and just try and crack one side and then collapse down the rest of the line. So as you can see, these greatswords are taking a beating. With the Cascading Fire Coke, all my troops get armor piercing, and plus these Chaos Spawn are going to do very well. Over here on the western flank, I sent some of these Forsaken and Chaos Warriors just trying to keep these guys at bay, and I just wanted him to engage with these, and so he would be wasting them on these fodder units. And I also moved the Chosen over here, but in an ideal world, I can get the Chosen on these cavalry. But in this situation, it's not going to happen. He's just going to run circles around me, so I realized that, I just need to put them to use, and even if it's against Spearmen, so be it. So at least they have the Exalted Hero, and they will crush the Spearman group very, very quickly. So my opponent's going to keep the Outriders over there and just shoot at my flank. But unfortunately for me, he did land his leadership back here and chased off my hounds, which I'm fine with. As much time as he wants to waste on those things, I am totally okay. But now, this is when things are going to get really ugly for me. These Demogryph Knights are going to get around here and get a full flank. And that's one thing that I find quite tricky about Chaos is they don't really have good cavalry, and the cavalry they have are very expensive. So it's very hard to match the Empire cavalry when you're playing as Chaos. So unfortunately, Archaon is relatively exposed here. Basically, every chance I get, I'm casting either Cascading Fire Cloak or the Flaming Sword of Ruin to really punch through. And you can see, actually, my units are in good health, and his melee wall was starting to crumble here. Everything's pretty weak or wavering. And again, Archaon, if you take a look at his stats, he does cause fear, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he should. But regardless, my troops are doing pretty well here, but the Demogryph Knights do come in for a flank, and he starts to just target Archaon with everything. So I feel like that's one of the issues with Chaos, especially in terms of their leadership. You can always get a Chaos Lord, but even against Empire, I mean, they can, if they have a General of the Empire, an Amber Wizard, and an Empire Captain, they can just target you down, and there's nothing you can do about it. Like, really not much. With a Chaos Lord, you might be able to have potions, but anyways, my troops back here got tied up by the net of Amnitok, and that was definitely pretty good. So that trapped a substantial portion of my troops over here, and they weren't able to get here and get a nice flank. So that was really well played on my opponent's part. And now he's just cycle charging with these Demogryph Knights. Thankfully for me, my Chosen with Halberds are kind of in the mix over here, so I'm trying to get them over here to help out. And when they do get here, hopefully they can make a difference. So I do use the Flaming Sword of Ruin, and I have quite a few troops left. I have some Forsaken, I have some Chaos Warriors, but this cycle charging is just brutal. And then he starts to actually target Archaon really aggressively. And you can see I'm trying to path Archaon towards his troops so he gets a little deeper in, and they don't have free access. But unfortunately, he's just going to get cheesed out by these guys in the Manticore. And that's something I'd like to see is that, more expensive commanders like, Karl Franz has the same problem. And, Manfred is a little better because he has Invocation and a Heck. But these guys like Archaon and Grimgor Ironhide, for example, there's not much they can do when a faction like Empire or Beastmen or, sends their Gore Bulls or really aggressive units after them. They kind of just go down. And, at that point, after all the cycle charges and different things like that, my forces unfortunately collapsed. But my opponent did a really good job with those cycle charges and had serious value out of those Demogryph Knights. He also didn't allow my Halberdiers, the Chaos Chosen, with the Halberds to get on the Demogryph Knights, which is a really, really important thing. If I had been able to tie those guys up and, use Archaon to give them armor piercing or additional damage, it could have been pretty ugly, but he did a very good job with that. So definitely a good game to my opponent. So as far as my army goes, Archaon was okay. I like him because I'm a big fan of the Lore of Fire with Chaos, but again, just in this meta, he is not viable at all. I've been trying him with different builds, and I guess against certain factions, like Greenskins, it probably wouldn't be so bad, but with factions like Empire, who can just, hero target and just dive bomb him with these flying units, there's really not much you can do, in my opinion. The Exalted Heroes did okay. They do encourage local troops, and, they do give you a little bit of a presence. That one Exalted Hero helped collapse the western flank with the Spearman. He did quite well, but again, I don't know if it was worth investing into. The Forsaken did pretty good. They came around, got a flank, and helped me crack that eastern flank. Chaos Warriors did their 2 cents, and the Halberdiers did okay. Again, they weren't able to get on these Demogryph Knights. As you guys can see, he kind of had free range with these, though most of his infantry did get cut through. But regardless, the Hounds did pretty well. They were able to shut down the cannon as well as these handgunners, and the Chaos Spawn also did pretty good. But again, not huge value out of that. So my opponent's army, those Demogryph Knights did really well, and he got a lot of kills with Outriders as well. So that was definitely really solid on my opponent's part. So a really good game to Ryderak. I think that's how you say it. Look forward to seeing you again on Ladder, and appreciate you guys watching. Have an excellent night, and thanks for the support.